Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Thinking or Rethinking Your Social Media Strategy for 2018, presented by Sensei and Early Growth Financial Services. My name is Amanda Young, and I'll be your moderator from the Early Growth team. And I just have a couple quick notes before we get started. This webinar will last about an hour, and that includes time at the end for questions and discussion. We'll also take questions throughout the webinar, so please feel free to type your questions into the control panel, and I'll jump in when possible in order to ask them for you. The next thing to note is that we are going to record this webinar, and we will send it to everybody within 48 hours of the webinar. We'll also include the slide deck and everybody's contact information in that email. You can also find this recording and all of our recordings on our YouTube channel, Early Growth. So now, before I pass it off to our speaker, I just want to tell everybody a little bit about Early Growth Financial Services. Here's just a quick description of what we do. We're an outsourced finance and accounting firm, and we work with early stage companies, helping them with everything from their day-to-day accounting to financial forecasts to taxes and valuations. So now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Eric Meyerson, who will tell us a little bit about himself and also what we're going to be talking about today in our discussion.
Hi, everybody. Good to meet you. My name is Eric Meyerson. I'm head of marketing for a company called Sensei. I'll talk a little bit about later. But what I'm really here to talk with you about today is about how businesses are using social media effectively in 2018. And I say in 2018 because things are changing very quickly, rapidly across all the major social media platforms. And I want to talk about what's happening on each of the major platforms in the US. And you could take a look at how you're using them, how you're not using them, and get some real focus and make sure that you're using them in the way that they're best suited for right now so that you're actually getting results out of it for your business. So we're going to talk about how you need to change your mindset around social media, which platforms you should use, which you should ignore, how you define your purpose on social media, and then last but not least, I'll give you a framework for a workshop so that you'll be able to figure out exactly what your social media marketing strategy is. So first of all, a little bit about me. I'm currently head of marketing for a company called Sensei. We're a new startup and an early growth financial services customer. We are an AI technology company that helps figure out everything that's actually working on social media today based on the current algorithms and feature sets. And then based on your goals and your followers, we can tell you exactly what you should do next so that you can grow your social media marketing success. Before I joined Sensei, I was director of marketing for media and video at Facebook up until about 1 year ago. I was also head of marketing for advertiser and creators at YouTube, and I was director of consumer marketing for 3 years at Eventbrite. So I have a pretty long career in social media platforms, as well as in a non-social media platform, Eventbrite, which was very dependent on social media for connecting people to each other. So let's talk a little bit about marketing on social media. You're marketing on social media because you have to. Why do you have to? Well, within the next 2 years, people in the USA will be spending more time per day on their phones consuming content than they are on television. That is huge because the average US household has the television on for over 4 hours a day, still today. And Facebook is continuing to grow. All social media platforms are continuing to grow. Facebook has over 2 billion users. YouTube is also approaching 2 billion as well. There's more people on Facebook on YouTube in the world than even own a television at this point. And Instagram is catching up very quickly. As you may have heard, Facebook got a lot of bad press in Q1, particularly around user privacy, Cambridge Analytica, and how they were manipulated in elections. And in Q1, that quarter where people were supposedly deleting Facebook, Facebook added 70 million new users. All these platforms are growing. This is not a fad. Social media is here to stay and is how people expect to communicate with each other and with brands. So here's how you might be thinking about social media. On the left is your company, and on the right are your customers, your fans, your stakeholders. And in between is the social media platform. And you're using the social media platform to communicate back and forth with your customers. Let's go to the next slide and we'll see how it actually works. So this is how it actually works. You are not separate from the social media platform. If you want to communicate with your stakeholders, and those stakeholders could be customers, fans, investors, partners, vendors, Well, guess what? Your company lives on those social media platforms, and that social media platform has complete control over how you look and how you engage on those platforms. As you'll see at the top there with algorithms and boosts, what the information that you want to communicate to your stakeholders is really controlled by the algorithms on those platforms. They'll let a trickle of that information get through to your stakeholders unless you're direct messaging with them. And the rest you have to pay for. One of the reasons why Facebook's business has been growing so fast on a revenue basis is because of this, is because companies spend a lot of time trying to engage customers, get them to like their page, thinking that that was going to allow them to communicate directly with those customers. And then ultimately Facebook said, well, actually you have to pay to reach those customers who have already liked your page. That's where boosts come in. There's also ads that are targeted, and I'll tell you what, if you talk to anybody who works in digital marketing and advertising, they will tell you that Facebook and Facebook's own properties, including Instagram, are very effective advertising platforms. There are also communities like groups and forums that live on these platforms, and messenger platforms as well. Facebook owns several of the major messenger platforms of the world, but it may surprise you that some of the largest messenger platforms include Twitter and Instagram, also owned by Facebook, the latter, because people are using them to communicate back and forth around content that they like, and brands are participating in them as well. Next slide. So here's how you should be thinking about social media, and I'll start with the end on here. You should not plan on being on every platform, and there are reasons why. If right now you've set up a Facebook and a Twitter and a YouTube and an Instagram and a Snapchat and a LinkedIn, you may be spreading yourself really thin, and you may not be very strategic about what you're trying to do with these platforms, and you may not be getting results for all the time that you're putting into this. Each platform has different strengths and weaknesses. Each of them have different rules, features, etiquette. They all have a different primary audience, and each platform is going to mean something different for your business. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through after this each platform to talk about exactly how you can use each of them and help you choose. Let's go to the next slide. So before we do this, we need to take a step back and think about your marketing strategy. I recently presented this to a panel of 60 company founders, and I asked how many of them had somebody whose job it was to work on their marketing. And only about a third of the hands went up. For 2/3 of them, they, as the founder of the company, were also the ones responsible for marketing. And it was clear with talking with them that very few of them actually had a really strong marketing strategy. The reason why I bring this up, questions like, who are you? What is your voice? Who are your audiences? What do you want them to think? What do you want them to do? These are questions you need to ask and answer before you actually even get into social media. Social media marketing is not a substitute for a marketing plan, but it is an important pillar of one. And it's one that you need to take seriously and strategically in order for it to work. But before you get to that, you need to understand exactly who you are, who you're trying to reach, and what exactly you're trying to get them to do. Next slide. So this is a pretty classic funnel. It's a highly simplified version of what marketing actually works like. You start with leads. There are lots of ways to drive, whether it's traffic to your site, traffic into your business, phone calls, whatever it takes for your business in order to generate customers, and it goes into the top. And some of those people become customers. On the right is lead nurturing. After someone comes and engages you for the first time, what are all the things you need to do to turn them into customers? And then at the bottom, once they become your customer, how do you continue to engage them? How do you get them to refer more business? And how do you upsell more to them? On the left is the brand. And the brand are all the things that you're doing for your company, whether it's PR, influencer marketing, content marketing, third-party reviews. Those are the things that really lubricate that funnel and makes it easier and cheaper to turn a browser into an engaged buyer. Now, the reason why I bring up social in the context of this is because you'll see the word social is on here a couple times. At the top, there's social ads, there's social organic. But the reality is that social actually plays a part in almost everything on here. It's the experiments you do, the partnerships you do, the PR work that you do, the content marketing that you do. It helps your search engine optimization. How you're doing on social will determine how your business is doing as far as getting customers and keeping them. Next slide. So let's think about the social media marketing strategy. I pulled this picture here off of Google image search just for looking for the sort of typical idea of how a lot of people think about social media, which is this is I give it to the intern, or this is the thing that my young employee who is on their phone all day is going to manage for me. And the fact of the matter is that is not going to work. You need to be involved in it for the reasons I just talked about. Next slide. The first thing you need to do is articulate an authentic human voice. Brand messaging doesn't work well on social media. Social media is for people, and also I mentioned it's for advertisers. But if you think about something aside of social media as an ad platform for yourself, if you think about it as a place where you really want to engage people, find new stakeholders, and get them to connect with your business, you need to be a human being on there. That picture on there is from an actual real ad campaign that Facebook is running right now. You may have seen their ads on television. This is from a bus stop just across the street from our office here in San Francisco. One of the things that Facebook has done, and I'm going to make note of this a little later when I talk about Facebook specifically, is change their algorithm a couple months ago so that brand communications have reduced to almost nothing. And in fact, sharing links on Facebook, even by people, isn't working terribly well. Facebook right now is trying to encourage conversation among friends because Facebook is about people. And what they found is that users are happier and are more likely to come back to Facebook when they're actively engaged in conversations. And a brand communication from a brand is not something that's going to create conversation among friends. Next page. So this is an awkward question, but one I want you to think about deeply. Who is the person who is your brand? By which I mean you need to define a voice based on your company. If your company is a pizza shop, you might want to be the owner of the pizza shop is your voice. But if you're a more serious B2B brand, you may want to have a more serious voice. So for example, on the left, I show examples of what Wendy's has done on social media, and I'll show another example of them later. Nobody wants to talk to a company, a giant international corporation that sells burgers and fries. So Wendy's has done a great job of using social media to create a real human voice behind things, to be funny and to be clear. And sometimes on the left, it can be positive, and sometimes that slide in the middle could be a little snarky and about their competitors. But either way, it actually creates a real impact, emotional impact with people. But on the right, Forrester Research, a company that sells very serious B2B reports that are very expensive to corporate managers, needs to be very serious in their conversations. And they think that with everything that they share on social media is ultimately about their brand, which is around measurement and strategy. Next page. So the main thing is to don't try to be someone you're not. And the internet is full of examples of brands that have failed with this. There's actually a great subreddit on Reddit called Fellow Kids, where you can see brands trying very hard to relate closely to young consumers with messages that just fall flat or don't work very well. On the right, you can see IHOP using the phrase "on fleek," which was a hip phrase to use for about a minute in 2014, and it just doesn't work well for IHOP, and people don't seem to really like that very much. In the middle there, you can see a McDonald's share where they try to mimic an actual authentic communication among friends, but then also use a very professional, inauthentic looking image of that particular McDonald's food item, which makes the whole thing not work terribly well. Authenticity really matters, and you have to ask yourself, how will my customers or my stakeholders know that there are human beings here behind this brand and that relate very closely and authentically to the messages that it's trying to put out. Next page. So we're going to talk about picking your platforms. So as I mentioned before, you will not be successful if you are actually everywhere at once. I've listed 7 of the largest platforms here in the US, and I'm going to talk very briefly about each of these so that you'll have an opportunity to think about whether it's the right place or not for you to engage. And there is maybe a perfectly good reason for you to not be on Instagram or not be on Pinterest or even not be on Facebook, depending on what your business is actually trying to do from a marketing standpoint. So let's go through these one at a time now. So first, let's talk a little bit about Facebook. Now, your vision of Facebook may be one that is out of date. Facebook used to be a place where a business would ask someone, hey, like us on Facebook. If you are still asking your customers to like us on Facebook, you can stop doing that. Use that time to communicate with customers about something that's more useful for your business than like us on Facebook. The reason being that someone liking you on Facebook doesn't really get you anything anymore. It used to be because if someone liked you on Facebook, it meant you could post things to Facebook and they would see it on newsfeed. No more. They are really not showing any of that on newsfeed anymore. You could still pay to boost posts to people who have already liked you on Facebook. So you could still make some use of that asset. But for the most part, Facebook has said very clearly that they are not terribly interested in brands communicating in newsfeed anymore. That is going to be entirely an ad purchase type of activity now. So let's go to the next page and talk about what Facebook actually is. So you may have seen Mark Zuckerberg testifying in front of Congress recently. He testified in front of the EU yesterday and talked a lot about all of the issues that they've had with data privacy and some of the other failures that they've had over the last 2 years. Well, Facebook has a lot of the changes that they've made in their algorithm this year, which I touched on briefly before, is in reaction to that. Fake news, misinformation, and negativity and trolling are things that they've tried to control. And they've done a lot of things about that. But one of the things they've done is just try to reduce branded communications from newsfeed entirely. And so you want to stop, you don't want to think about Facebook in that way anymore. You do want to be on Facebook. You see prime audience, adults over 25. If you're trying to reach an adult audience, it still is actually important that you're on Facebook, but in a different way that you might have been. First of all, you want to think of your Facebook page as your second web page. It may appear very highly in Google search results. People may search for your business on Facebook. What's on that page needs to represent your business very well and what you want people to think about it. But because you are living in Facebook's sandbox, you're playing by their rules. So I showed that graphic a few slides ago, which shows how your business on Facebook is very much owned and operated by Facebook. There is a list of business types that you may choose from. Facebook decides what's on that list. You have to work within their parameters. But do your best to work within their parameters to create an experience on that page that does a good job of communicating why someone viewing that page would want to connect with you and maybe come to your web page to learn more. Facebook's also good for advertising. It's a great ad platform and also for boosting content. Now, advertising on Facebook is complicated. Their ads interface has a lot of parameters in it, a lot of targeting options. Boosting is when you can actually put something on Facebook and pay them money so that more people see the post. It's different from buying an ad. It's maybe too simple in that they say, hey, give us some money and we'll show it to more people. But it's hard to tell which people it's going to. To that end, I'll just mention as an aside, this is one of the things that Sensei, our company, is working on, is an AI interface to simplify and make both of these things effective, especially telling you when you should boost. Another thing you want to think about for Facebook is community management. A lot of the best things happening on Facebook today are not happening in newsfeed. They're happening in groups. People are spending a lot of time in Facebook groups, engaging around things. This is where you can step in, whether you as a person or you as a business, is finding groups that are around topics that relate to what your business does and spend time in there engaging with people. Photos matter greatly to Facebook as well as video, and they're pushing the stories. So although it's very hard to get your business in a newsfeed anymore, stories sits above newsfeed in the app. And actually, you're not too late to be early to stories. If you start publishing photos and videos to Facebook stories, a lot of people will actually see it. Now, there isn't public commentary on it. So it's different from newsfeed, but it's a great way of getting a brand impression among people who if they've already liked your page. How long they maintain that as a source of organic engagement remains to be seen. And ultimately, Facebook will find a way to having you pay to be in stories, the way that they're getting brands to pay to be in Instagram stories today. And then finally, mid-length video marketing. Facebook is making a huge pitch in a video, right? A huge push in a video right now. It's one of the things I actually worked on when I was working there. But they're taking a different approach from YouTube on one side, which is around short form with pre-roll ads in front of them, or say like a Netflix or Hulu, which is very long form. They're looking right now at mid-length videos, and that will work best And that can sit well within Facebook Watch, which is that video tab within the app, where Facebook really wants to end up directing a lot of traffic over the long run. Within a couple years, Facebook thinks that Watch very well may end up being their primary surface by which people consume content on Facebook when they come there, not newsfeed. And it's a place you should think about investing if you are already creating video. Next page. All right, let's talk about Instagram. Instagram is the social network with the most momentum right now. And I'll tell you this, at Sensei, where we run ads on Google AdWords, where we ask people, do you want help with the social network? Do you want help with your Twitter presence, your Facebook presence, your YouTube presence, your Instagram presence? Instagram gets more traffic on those ads than the other three combined. It has a ton of momentum. And in fact, if you look in the lower right there for your prime audience, the prime audience is people under 30, but it is expanding very quickly. And it's becoming an almost universal application. But how should you think about Instagram? Well, first of all, it's your third web page, because so many people spend so much time on Instagram. When they discover your profile there, for a lot of cases, this will be the first thing they learn about your business. So make sure your bio is really good. Make sure your profile picture is really good. The bio is also the only place on Instagram you can link out to anything. So if you have if you want people to come to your website or your Yelp page or whatever you think is the best place for you to market your business, this is the place to do it. Think about your top 9, meaning the last 9 pictures that you see. Those are the pictures that can appear in a grid on most mobile phones. And that top 9 will represent what people see about your business. So every time you upload a new picture to Instagram, you're changing that top 9. And so every now and then take a look at it and say, do these 9 pictures really represent what I want people to think about my business? And if there's anything on there that doesn't represent it, you should go ahead and delete that picture from there. And remember that archival content doesn't have a ton of value on Instagram. It tends to be fairly real time. And in that sense, you should think all the time about what your profile looks like. Remember, your visual content shouldn't be too commercial. If it's pictures of your products or picture that's selling things, it's not going to get discovered and it's not going to get a lot of engagement. Be sure to use pics, memes, short videos, other things that is visually engaging, makes people laugh, or inspires them in some way. If you're doing Instagram stories, and you should if you're using Instagram, you can also recycle that content on Facebook. It is important that you do Instagram stories. People are spending a lot more time with Instagram stories than these days, as much time as they are in feed. So be sure to be there when you're uploading and you're thinking about what your content strategy is here. And last but not least, I said there, link in bio is like the phrase that really matters there. Because you can't link from any individual picture, Instagram is not a great source of traffic anywhere. And so that link that's in your bio really needs to matter. Next. All right, YouTube. I want you to think about YouTube as a search engine, and that's it. Unless you have really strong in-house video production and you are creating content that is really designed to build and maintain an audience over time, which is very difficult to do and requires a lot of full-time commitment, think about YouTube as a place that people can search for information that relates to your business. So create video that has strong SEO, has strong search engine optimization, and has a longer shelf life. It's not important that it's the hot thing of the moment, because you're competing with thousands of really entertaining creators who are trying to be the hot thing of the moment. What matters is people go to YouTube when they want to solve a problem, when they want to know more about things. If your business can help solve a problem, or it can be informational, then this is a great place to upload a video to get results around that. So create content that's helpful and useful. And I say there, metadata, metadata, metadata. What that means is that the tags that you put in your on your video matter greatly. You can put almost as much information as you want in the video description. It can be thousands of words long. So include in there the things that matter most, that are going to most relate to what your video is about, and more importantly, what people are looking for that is going to relate to the video content. You should also caption your video, include captions, because those closed captions for the hearing impaired also are indexable. That means that YouTube sees the words in that, and it also uses those for discovery when people are searching for video. And I say prime audience on there, everyone. So anyone who is looking for something, if they're going to search for it in video form, will be looking on YouTube first. And if they're looking on Google, it will also appear in search results there. Next page. Okay, Twitter. Twitter is good for a few things. Just so you know, first of all, it's still a niche platform. Most people are not on Twitter. Most people are on Facebook, but most people are not on Twitter. And if they're on Twitter, they may not use it terribly often. Although Twitter has an algorithm built into it based on the people who you followed, and they're trying to surface more and more content that may be hours old. It is still a real-time platform. And that means that what matters is what you're tweeting right now. The average tweet has a half-life of about half an hour. And that means that within half an hour, your tweet is already half dead. And within a few hours, very few people are going to see it at all unless it gets shared and really goes viral. And it's very hard to plan or strategize around virality. But Twitter does matter for a few prime audiences. You'll see it in the lower right. If you have a PR strategy and you're trying to reach media, if you're trying to reach professionals in technical spaces, or if you're trying to reach diverse younger adults, Twitter really could matter for you and make a difference. You are much more likely to get press if you can engage with journalists, and Twitter's a great place to engage with journalists. It's a good place to distribute any content marketing that you're creating. If you create content marketing and you want to share it on Twitter, don't share it once, share it every day, because as I mentioned, these tweets die very quickly. And finally, it's a great place for people. It's not so great for brands unless they say human. And I put an example on here. Here's Wendy's again, but they're one of many brands. Interacting with Moon Pie, the snack that you might buy at a gas station or a 7-Eleven. Again, both brands that do a fantastic job of interacting with people and interacting with each other. Next page. All right, let's talk about Pinterest. Pinterest is a great place to showcase visual goods. If you are a brand that has products that look good visually, or you're selling a service that looks good visually, like you're a chef, then this is a great place to build an inspiration brand. Also, of all of these platforms I've talked about so far, it's really the best one at driving traffic. So if you want to drive traffic to content or to e-commerce, this is a great place to do it. People come to Pinterest because they want to learn about something visual. They want to get inspired and get ideas. And if they see something they like, they'll click through and they'll want to know how to buy or learn more about it. It's good for targeting women. There are not many men who use Pinterest very habitually, and the topics for men aren't strong there. But for women, it's actually a very, very powerful marketing platform. Next. All right, let's talk about LinkedIn. If you're a professional, you're probably already on LinkedIn. This is the other social network with momentum. If you're trying to reach adults at work, this is a great place to do it. It is career and business focused content, but your humanity is still rewarded. It favors published content over links. It's not a great traffic driver, but it's a great place to engage people directly with yourself. Don't think about posting on behalf of your company. Think about posting on behalf of yourself and using that as a way of marketing your company. It's where you post, not your company. An example I'll give, if you look at that upper right there, this is an article that I wrote just as a test, a fairly brief article that opinion thing that I wrote as an individual about firing people with dignity. And I wrote it in the wake of the president firing Secretary of State Tillerson over Twitter. And I wrote a piece about how difficult it is to fire people, and how important it is to do it well and with dignity and leave them with a good taste in their mouth about it. This is a piece that just by writing it and typing it directly into LinkedIn got a lot of traffic. It was seen by over 9,000 people, which is a significant multiple of the number of people who I'm actually connected to on LinkedIn. And the analytics you get tells you what company people, what their jobs are, and where they are. This is all free analytics that you get for everything that you add there. Now, you can also advertise on LinkedIn, and I mentioned that as the last bullet on there, but advertising is expensive. And I've seen different numbers around this. It's really only for an LTV that's a lifetime value of a customer if it's over $1,000. I've also seen a lifetime value of over $10,000 is really what it takes to make advertising worth it on LinkedIn. But I don't want you to take my word for it or either of those numbers. If you're trying to reach adults at work or you have a B2B business, this still could be an effective advertising platform for you, and you should definitely test it. Because obviously, that LTV, although that LTV will remain constant for you, the cost of acquisition is going to depend a lot on your product market fit and how you create the ads. Next. The last one I'll talk about is Snapchat. Snap is still used by people under 25 in a big way. It's very tricky for marketing. And the reason is because their data is closed off. In fact, Sensei, we don't service Snap because their APIs don't allow us to connect to Snap, and we can't see the data, and we can't give people good recommendations as a result. Maybe someday they'll open up, but for now, they're very committed to being a completely closed off platform. That chart on the upper right is also something you should know about with Snap. That is actual user sentiment among adults under the age of 35 of Snap. And you'll see it just fell off a cliff early this year. Why? Because Snapchat redesigned their UI, and they redesigned it in a way that was absolutely disastrous. A lot of the Snap users who are using it for Snapchat stories, Snapchat really invented the story as a medium, are now actually doing that on Instagram and spending time there. There was also, you may have seen a well-publicized tweet by a prominent Kardashian saying that her celebrity friends are all gone from there. And that's probably very worrying for them. However, if you're trying to reach under 25, it's worth testing. I will also put the last bullet on there, which is that I know anecdotally from speaking with businesses, including those that make money off of affiliate links, that they've had success advertising on Snap. It takes some production to be able to create the ads for them, but they said that actually it's been profitable for them, and so don't write it off. And Snap even announced in their last earnings report, and this is considered negative news for you, but it's them, but it's probably positive news for you, is that they just cut their advertising prices. Next. Okay, the last thing is that those are the platforms that are big in the US. If you're going outside the US, you should not assume that people have the same social media habits. In the lower left, I was in Japan recently. Line is an incredibly popular messaging and social media platform then. It's so popular that there are stores all over Japan that sell merchandise associated with the characters from the stickers that people could send to each other. On the right-hand side, that's a vending machine in Moscow where you can actually buy likes and followers on Instagram or their more popular social network, VK. Again, if you're going into another market, you should definitely not assume that their market is the same as the US, just like anything else you would do marketing in a foreign market. Next page. So what do you actually do on social media? Just to review, there's really 3 things you can do. You can publish content and boost it to get people to see it. You can engage people directly, and you can advertise. But the main thing I put in here is that you have to commit time and money to this if you want to be successful. It needs to be part of your marketing strategy. And that means you shouldn't think about operating social media for your business the way you do as a person, as a consumer. As a consumer, your use of social media may be, I'm bored waiting in line at the post office, or I'm sitting on the bus, and that's when I get into social. Social media engagement should be part of your marketing diet, and that means it needs to be part of your work, and that means you need to think hard about how am I going to put time and money into this to actually make it work the way I would any other marketing or aspect of my business. Next page. So starting again, just reviewing your marketing strategy, and once again, we're going to distribute this deck after the fact. Ask yourself what brand you're marketing. Ask, what is my human voice like? Am I authoritative? Am I friendly? What am I? Who is my audience? The more specific you can get, the better. If your audience is just all adults, that's going to be tough to target people. If you could tell it's adults with a certain job, is it men? Is it women? Is it a certain age? Are they located in a certain place? Are they suburban? Are they urban? The more specific you can get, the better your marketing is going to be. Ask yourself, what is their situation? What are they frustrated with, or what are the opportunities that they're missing that your business is going to be able to help them with? And then ask them, what do you want them to think and what do you want them to do, specifically as it relates to your business? Okay, next thing, pick your top platforms. Pick 2 to 4. The fewer you choose, the better you perform. As I mentioned, each of these take time and money to be successful on. So be sure to choose the right ones based on what you're actually trying to accomplish and who you're trying to reach. And this is, again, just shorthand for everything I talked about platform by platform and how they work in 2018. This would have been different last year and maybe different next year. But this is how you want to invest in these platforms today. And once again, we'll share this afterwards. Next page. And then finally, this is the framework that you want to put behind your social media marketing strategy. Ask yourself which platform you should use. And for each of those platforms, ask yourself these questions and answer them. Whom do I want to engage here? What am I trying to get them to do? What is my voice? What activities will I engage in? Whether that means posting, engaging with the community, or getting people to download your app. Who will be managing this? This is an operational question. Are you managing it, or do you have somebody else whose job it is to manage this and make this part of their job? And finally, how much money will I be willing to spend? The money question is a big one because while creating a Facebook account is free, creating content is not. Creating content for each of these platforms requires either labor or buying that content from professionals or from services that sell the content. And you need to be able to budget accordingly for that. If you're not going to spend money on it, then you need to ask yourself, how am I going to create the content that works to actually drive engagement on these platforms? And that's the end of our presentation. I'd love to take questions, but first of all, I'd like to say my contact information is on there. Check out Sensei. We are currently in beta, and we're charging only $25 a month for our professional service. We're going to raise that considerably when we come out of beta in about a month. But also connect with me directly. There's my email address. There's my Twitter handle. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. And I'm making myself available here. If there's any questions I can answer for you around social media or marketing, I am more than happy to help any business with that, absolutely for free. So feel free to connect with me directly.
Thanks, Eric. While we're waiting to see if any questions come in, I actually have a quick question. Do you have any recommendations about the number of posts you should do per day? Like if you say that Twitter has a really quick life, should you be doing a ton of posts, or should you be doing them more at targeted times?
That's a really good question. Thank you for asking that. It really depends on the platform. And I mentioned sort of at the beginning, each platform has its own sort of rules, features, and etiquette. And I'd say some of these should be followed very closely, and some of them can be ignored. So an example of one you want to follow very closely, you mentioned Twitter right there. You're absolutely right. If you're engaging people on Twitter, like responding to tweets, the timing doesn't matter. And if you want to set aside your time, if people are tweeting at you for customer service reasons, and by the way, a Twitter user who has a question for your business, who finds your business on Twitter, will take that as an invitation that they could tweet at you or direct message you to ask you a question. And what you might do is set aside an hour a week or 15 minutes a day or whatever to answer those directly. Ones that you might want to ignore are, for example, there's a general sense of etiquette that you're only supposed to post to Instagram once a day. I can tell you that that is actually not true. You should post to Instagram based on how much interesting content that you have, when you get it, and what you're trying to do there. And you probably don't want to post 10 times a day to Instagram the way you might post 10 times a day to Twitter. But you don't have to do once a day. You could definitely go more. You're going to learn more from your own testing and engagement. And again, it's one of the things that we offer even for our free customers is that you'll be able to see in the app exactly which posts over a week or a month or whatever timeline you want are actually engaging people, and you'll learn more about what actually works based on that.
Thank you. So we do have a question. Renata would like to know, what are your thoughts on Google Plus and Medium? And also if you have any thoughts on rewriting articles versus publishing original content.
Okay, awesome question. Thank you for asking, Ronaldo. So first of all, the question was about, I'll answer about Google Plus first. So I would not spend time on Google Plus and posting to it. Google introduced Google Plus to be a social layer across their platforms. It never really got much intake. uptake, excuse me. And so you'll see that Google isn't really putting a lot into it anymore. There is still, Google still says that there's SEO value from posting to Google Plus, but I have not really observed that. I don't think a lot of SEO people will tell you that Google Plus really matters. I think as a use of time, you can find better use of your time on social media. Medium is interesting because it's a blogging platform, but it's one of several blogging platforms. And I'd say the major risk with Medium is that Medium is also trying to become a media company, not just a blogging platform. So, for example, if you sign up for a Blogger account or a WordPress account, you can blog and post it anywhere, and you can know that that blog, where it sits, will continue to live that way, and you can distribute it anywhere. But when you're creating content for Medium, and there's an upside and a downside to this, you're part of a Medium system where Medium is trying to build an audience for you. Now, that might be great, and it might get you extra traffic on there. In that sense, it's a little bit like a social network. But the challenge is that Medium has changed their business model several times over the last few years, and I would consider them to be a very unstable platform. They are putting things in front of paywalls, they are changing rules, etc. And any audience that you build on Medium may or may not be worth anything depending on what direction they go. So Medium can have value, but just be sure to use care when you're there, because no one really knows what direction they're going to end up going in. And their founder at Williams has basically said as such that they're still thinking about exactly what form Medium is going to take in the long run. There was one final question on there. What was it again?
Her thoughts on, she asked about your thoughts on rewriting articles, which maybe means reposting articles versus publishing original content.
So good question. So I think it depends. So first of all, I think blogging for your business obviously is a great idea. It creates SEO value for your business, and it gives people something to think about besides buy my product, and it can establish you as an expert. I think when you're posting that on, you should definitely think about all of your social media platforms as a place to drive traffic. However, most of them will actually reward better if you post directly in the platform. So for example, if you write a short blog post and then put it as a link in LinkedIn, it's not going to get a lot of traffic. However, if you take a portion of that and actually paste that directly and blog it into LinkedIn, that will get a lot of traffic. LinkedIn actually likes that quite a bit, and people are more likely, they'll show it, the algorithm will show it to more people, and they'll share that with more people, and it'll end up getting more traction for you in the long run. So definitely consider a blend of creating your own owned blogs and creating content natively on these platforms.
Thank you. Do you have any thoughts on Quora and answering questions on there?
Great question. So the reason I didn't mention Quora in here is that it's not really a social network. Quora actually does have value specifically for search engine optimization, which is that people who type in questions, especially B2B oriented questions, how do I successfully manage payroll when I have more than 5 employees, as opposed to consumer oriented questions like how do I fix my sink? Those types of questions actually do really well in Google. If you're on Quora answering the questions, and particularly answering well and have like a top rated answer, then you could end up getting sort of traffic or reputation off of that. And so it's definitely a platform worth playing in. Remember that you are on Quora as an individual, not as a business, but they can definitely associate you with your business. And when people ask questions about businesses on there, like what type of business should I go to for X, you should definitely get in there and try to answer that question, because again, that all gets indexed by Google and it will help your search ranking.
Awesome, thank you. I think that's the last of our questions, but just to remind everybody, if anything else comes up, if you have questions, you can reach out to Eric. His contact information is up there, and we will also be sending a follow-up email to everybody and including him on that. Eric, any final thoughts before we close out?
Please feel free to contact me, follow me on Twitter right there, email me directly. I'd love to talk with you. Thanks again, everybody.
Great, thank you so much, Eric. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.